The long winter persisted, and food became ever scarcer. Harbors once snow-free were now choked with ice, and once fertile fields lay abandoned. Creatures from the forests prowled ever closer to homesteads. The urge to protect their own kindled in each clan, straining the fragile unity maintained by the Völve. Some heroes had willingly joined the longship of the legendary raider, Herolf. Others were conscripted along the way as they journeyed through the treacherous Serpent Sea's wildest stretches. Weeks had passed since their departure, and their value had become evident on this perilous voyage. 2 ships had already succumbed to the Serpent Sea's tricks, claiming countless lives. Now, with only 1 ship remaining, they pressed on. Herolf remained adamant that the tower would be reached soon. Herolf gathered 4 crew members who stood out. First, he looked at a strange old woman. He called her Helga, and told everyone the great deed she had recently performed when a crewman fell from the ship, and without hesitation, she had jumped into the water, saved him, and blessed him. He then turned to Asteria. When several food crates began to rot, Asteria led a small party to find food. She followed tracks, and they found a herd of elk. Herolf was impressed by the strategy she used to hunt the elk, and the crew was fully resupplied. Asteria introduced herself. She was tight-lipped, and when Herolf tried to ask for more details, she told him that she did not feel comfortable sharing more. Herolf looked at Cuchulainn, who had recently joined the crew and warned them of a great danger, which helped the crew be prepared and defeat the monster whose head lay proudly on the ship. Cullen, looking like a proud young man, said he had seen the tower in his dreams and wanted to go there. Finally, Herolf turned to Aeron. He did not seem to know much about the tower, but he said it was his master's last wish that his apprentice go there. He looked like a bald young man, a little younger than Cullen and Asteria. Herolf explained that when one of the raiders threw an axe at him for no reason, he grabbed it in the air and forgave the man. Herolf thanked everyone for what they had done so far, and asked if they would help lead the rest of the crew. Everyone nodded, and Herolf suggested they cheer with mead. Cullen and Asteria nodded again and raised their glasses. Iron joined them, but did not seem to be used to drinking alcohol, for he coughed loudly. Helga would not participate. The group broke up. Helga started doing push-ups, which surprised Herolf and Asteria, but she quickly left to do her own thing. She prepared food rations for everyone and was approached by a friendly green dragonborn who offered to help, but she declined the offer and was not open to small talk. Cullen looked at the sky, silently searching for crows. Iron clumsily argued with a Tuss about which animal he was, before apologizing and insisting that he meant no harm. The Tuss was astonished when Iron asked what the Völve was, as if he had no idea about the life of hunters. At one point, an aggressive half-orc approached Helga, looking for a fight, but the old woman stopped him with a firm hand on his shoulder. He growled as he left. A few hours later, the roar of thunder shook the crew. For a moment, there was a green aurora hanging over the great inner mountains, and then darkness. Suddenly, lightning struck the sky, illuminating the horizon, again and again and again. They barely had time to make sense of it, for the longship was being violently buffeted by wind and waves. A cold, sideways rain pelted them. They used the oar-bench to brace themselves just as they saw the ship's banner, painted in the deep purple representing the Völve, about to be torn and fly away. Cullen and Asteria quickly tied themselves to ropes, as did nearby crew members, but 3 of them fell overboard. Asteria, with the help of other crew members, managed to pull one of them back. Cullen jumped into the water and swam to the aid of a tall folk. Helga and Iron threw a rope to help, and Cullen miraculously managed to throw the tall folk back to the ship. Unfortunately, as more waves hit the ship, Iron fell into the water, and another crew member drifted away. Asteria threw another rope to Iron, who managed to grab it, but as they began to pull, he lost his grip and disappeared into the water. Helga grabbed a rope and asked Herolf to hold it while she jumped to find Iron. Meanwhile, Asteria noticed that the banner was about to be torn off. She rushed to grab it, touching it with her fingertips, but it was a second too late, and the banner flew away. Helga swam, but could not find Iron, and was eventually pulled back by the crew. The storm continued for what seemed like days, but was probably no more than an hour. Even when the wind and lightning subsided, the rain continued to drizzle down, providing little respite. Their longship had sustained some damage, its remaining sail badly torn. As they helped to repair the damage, They saw streaks of multicolored light on the horizon, filling the sky with greens and yellows, reds and subtle blues, an aurora. Harolf, looking tired, his beard matted and soaked, smiled grimly. He held a drinking horn and poured a measure of mead into the water, honoring the raiders who had been swept away by the sea. A sacrifice for you, my brave friends. May fate intervene and protect you from the snake's clutches. He lifted the small amount of mead in his horn into the air. And to all of you, too. Skål. The crew joined him in shouting and drinking. The next day the crew worked to repair as much of the ship as possible. Helga and Asteria worked together, and Helga was impressed by the young woman's skills. She asked where she had learned it, and Asteria explained that she had learned it from her father. Helga tried to continue the conversation, asking about her deep blue eyes, but Asteria refused, telling the old woman to do herself a favor and stay away from her. Later in the day, as Harolf gazed at the horizon through the thick fog, Helga and Asteria noticed that two crew members approached him, drawing their weapon. In response, Asteria grabbed her bow and aimed it at the half-orc's hand. The arrow pierced him, and with a grunt, he dropped his weapon. Harolf turned to see the two menacing figures in front of him. As Helga rushed to defend her leader, another man attacked her. She did not seem to be bothered by him and, in response, slashed his torso as he fell dead to the ground. She also overheard the two half-orcs talking about how they were paid to kill Harolf. Cullen heard the commotion and approached, pike in hand, to join the fray. Eventually he pushed the unharmed one overboard, and the one with an arrow in his hand jumped on his own as they both disappeared. While examining the only dead body, Asteria and Harolf found a token with the Tavar clan painted on it. The rest of the crew gathered and asked what had happened, all shocked to find 3 traitors on board. They continued to row silently, with a palpable tension in the air. As the fog lifted, the heavy clouds above them began to dissipate, and they could finally see them. After weeks of sailing, they had arrived at the place the Völve had seen in their dreams. The tower had been partially submerged by the sharp black lava rock that covered the beach. About 60 feet of the building still rose above it. It was like no other structure they had seen, built of tightly fitting dark stone with barely a seam. There might have been windows on the upper level, but it was hard to tell. There was a balcony 30 feet above them, full of debris. There was a gap in the south wall, with rock and debris pouring into the tower. Otherwise, the lava field stretched south and east, with hills far in that direction. There was a trace of snow on the wind, though the ground itself was warm enough to melt shortly after it fell. The longship reached the ground, and they jumped. Cullen confirmed that it was the tower he had seen in his dreams. As they approached, Harolf and Asteria saw a hooded figure in the distance.